Hey, I'm here. So, Agile is an iterative project management style that promotes collaboration, learning, and improving over time. Today we are going to talk about how can you start adopting Agile in your company, especially if you are giving those first steps into the Agile world. Let's do this. So in our previous video, we talked about what Agile is and when should you use it. We will link the video up here so you can take a look if you are interested in knowing more about Agile. But the question is, how do you actually, in practice, adapt Agile in your company? So when you want to start adopting Agile, you are also going to have some kind of a roadmap. Roadmaps are typically delivered by some kind of a product team that tries to set the strategy, the goal and vision for the product, but it also tries to then plan how to get to that vision. What are the features or what are the different items that we have to have available in the product in order to accomplish that vision that we want to have. I will drop a link here on the video that we created on how to build a vision for your company. What you will define in your roadmap are the items that you want to deliver in your product. This can be the whole product, it can be as a one roadmap, depends on the size of the product, but it can be just improvements on existing products. How do we chunk this down? So typically what you will have when you have a roadmap is that you will have different goals across a year or maybe even several years, where you define that during this year, Q2, I want to achieve this, 2020 Q3, I want to achieve these things, and by 2020 Q4, I should have achieve these things. And I understand that maybe there are some longer term goals where basically I have to walk my way up and build those earlier features, so in the future I can build the more complex solutions that I want to build, and those will fall then into the next year. Where Agile starts to be different from a typical project management approach is how it breaks down this roadmap into actual deliverables or working packages. Call them as you want. In the end, what I want to define is that what are the small chunks that I'm going to be able to build for a certain feature that I can actually deliver to a customer that it will provide value for them. So think about if you are doing an e-commerce platform. It might be that your first approach is not to go for every single country in the world, but you want to target that you are able to sell in one country, sell the US, for example, and you want to be able to solve all the taxations in that country. It might be that it's even because per state, because in the US probably states have different taxations. What you don't want necessarily to do is try to solve all the different cases and go and sell globally, but try to build and scale up your solution so you can be global at some point in the future. So defining these steps, how we will break down how the product is delivered in certain regions like the states in the US, this would give you a little bit the priorities for the different iterations that you will be building up. So when I talk about iterations, basically how I would do it is that I would divide a quarter of the year into several iterations. Typically you can do iterations that last 4 weeks, and that's quite a good practice for the beginning of your journey in Agile. And the idea is that an iteration, what you want to do is that during an iteration, I want to be able to build a solution or part of the solution into the product so I can deliver it to customers and have already value for at least certain customers. So think about the case of having the e-commerce platform that solves the taxations. So I want to maybe concentrate on delivering in a certain country or certain states. And those are the first ones that will deliver during my iteration. Later on, the next ones will come. But the idea is that during an iteration, I will have a clear scope of what I want to do. And later on, I will increase on top of that one. So during an iteration, what we want to have is a common backlog of what we want to achieve. And this shouldn't be just what you want to achieve for the product development or the developers that are doing the execution of the project, but you also want to try to align from the very beginning of your iteration everybody that is working on this project. So say that you have people from product marketing, you want to deliver product marketing when you deliver this new feature. So promote that now we are able to sell in certain countries through our e-commerce platform. This you obviously want to market, and you probably want to document it as well. So people that are doing jobs which are not necessarily the development as we usually understand, but also complementing these other teams and complementing the actual solution, should be involved from the very beginning of the process. So they understand what's the scope of the iteration, understand what's the scope of the work that is going to be done, and also be able to deliver their own working packages by the end of the iteration and on time, of course. So you want to have a common backlog where you can identify all these different items that I want to have product marketing or product content released. I want to update our documentation pages. I want to be able to support certain states or countries taxation when we build up this e-commerce platform, and I want to be able to track it. So I want to see what are the things that are in a backlog, so waiting to be started, what are the things that are in progress, which items have been developed but need to be obviously reviewed by the rest of the team, and then which ones are the items that we can consider done. So when we consider done something, it means that it has been already planned properly, it has been developed and executed, and then it has been reviewed and approved by certain people or people that understand, stakeholders that understand how it should be reviewed. This is the definition of done. So you have to have a definition of done where you want to say that things had to comply to all these checklists in order to say that something is already done. And this iteration board should have not only development task items. Many times when you talk about Agile, it's very focused on the software development and very focused to what are the teams, the software engineering teams developing. So it should have the items where the other teams are working as well and try to reflect the reality of that work and the progress, so you can actually align your releases and your deliverables properly. When you think about this, when you think about this iteration, you're thinking about how do I do planning before the iteration? This is how you collaborate. This is the collaboration part that Heart of Agile is promoting. Of course, the collaboration should go throughout the whole iteration process. And by the end of the iteration, of course, we want to deliver something to our users. So that's obviously something that is already covered as well by the Heart of Agile. Typically what you will have is by the end of your iteration, you're going to have some kind of beta testing process. And this is the moment that you want to engage with your users, get feedback from them. Does this solution make sense? And remember, beta testing is something that you should be safe to share with your users and let them give an honest feedback on this feature before it goes out into a production version of the product. During our previous video, we were talking about in the Heart of Agile that typically the improve part and the reflect part are maybe the ones that are more overlooked by many companies. And here's where Agile can help a lot if done properly. Typically when you think about Agile, and especially if we think about Scrum, typically what is working in small development cycles. These are usually called sprints, and a sprint can be somewhere between 1 and 4 weeks. So it can be lasting as long as your iteration, or maybe that you want to adapt to break down your iteration into 2 sprints. The idea is that whenever you plan a sprint, and this is what typically is called grooming, you want to be able to define the working packages very well so the developers understand perfectly what needs to be done, and not just the developers but also any other function. Then during the iteration part there is obviously the execution phase. So let's say that we are building the product content and the product promotion materials. What Agile suggests here is to have the dailies, and the daily is a short meeting that happens every day where each member of the team talks about what they have done, what are they going to do on the next day, and what are the impediments. So what is it missing that they cannot proceed with their work? And the idea with this one is that everybody respects each other when talking. So nobody should interrupt and people should let the others talk, and questions should happen more towards the end or perhaps in different meetings. This is why you should be able to tell your impediments. So if I am not able to produce my product content, because in order to produce my product content, I actually need some screenshots or some video recording, and the solution or the product or the feature has not been yet implemented, I have a dependency towards the development team who is doing that. So this has to be understood and has to be communicated with the others. And this is the way that you can solve and identify problems as soon as possible. And when Agile is done trying to follow the Heart of Agile principles, typically you will have two kind of meetings at the end of each sprint. One is going to be your review, where you try to review the work that has been done. It can be also a demo, so you can share with the stakeholders the work that is done and the feature that has been implemented. Let's say, for example, if we're talking about this e-commerce platform, so how is it going to work? And do the demonstration of this work. This would correspond with the reflect part of the Heart of Agile. And finally, the other meeting that should happen after these sprints is the retrospective. And the retrospective is the one that we try to see how we improve our ways of working. As I said earlier in the beginning, Agile should be a continuous learning process. It's very important to promote this reflection where the teams can openly and confidently be able to discuss the ways of working, but also discuss the ways of improving the actual work. And it's not a point finger exercise, it's just that we as a team perhaps have not delivered part of the work as we should have. How can we do this in a better way? So always try to bring it from the constructive way. So typically when your iteration finishes, it's not necessarily the time when you are going to deliver the new release or the new product to your users. Typically what will happen is that after this iteration there's going to be then the beta testing part where you want to engage the users to give feedback. And after the beta testing there's probably some grace period in case that something needs fixing or adjusting. And then at that time you are going to be doing the actual release of the new product version. This can be somewhere between 2-3 weeks after the iteration ends. So there's going to be a little bit overlap between iteration, next iteration, and the time that actually the delivery of the product happens. Something else that you want to establish during the iteration phase, once you have defined this common backlog or common board for the company, is that you want to have regular meetings between or across the different teams to promote this cross-functional work. So typically the dailies are going to happen within one team, and this can be a product team, it can be a development team, it can be the marketing team, but usually they are not going to get people from other teams in these daily meetings. But what you want to promote is to have something like a roundtable meeting that it can happen weekly. So it will happen maybe 4 times per iteration. And you want to see there in each of these weekly meetings, see how the progress of the work is happening. So during the first meeting, you could see how the development teams start their work to a certain degree. Probably the documentation and the product marketing team can start already working on their own content. And you can see how this work evolves. And are you on plan? Are you on track while the iteration is moving forward? So this is the way that you try to collaborate also across different teams in a more cross-functional way. So does this make sense? Do you think that your company is already doing Agile to this level? Is it even more advanced? We would love to know, of course, about that. And are you interested in starting your Agile journey? And this doesn't mean that Agile is not something that should be only related to software development. It's a project management style that can be applied to pretty much any project. So please let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. And as always, if you like the video, please remember to subscribe and like it. And we'll see you in the next one. Stay safe.